So hello, Tammeil. It's great to have you join us again today for another interview. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. We've prepared just 20 questions for you today. Some serious, some a little bit fun, and for time purposes, we're going to try to keep the answers to under 2 minutes. Thatch will be keeping time.
Yeah, I'll do this when we've reached the 30-second.
All right, we'll do this when we've reached the 30
seconds
mark.
left.
So far away.
Does that work for you? Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, awesome. We want our readers to know what to expect of your leadership at Peralta, but we also want to break the ice and get to know you as a person a little bit. We'll be publishing this in form of a Q&A. So without further ado, let's jump into these questions. So first question comes from me. Not everyone in the Peralta community knows who the chancellor is or what a chancellor even does. In your own words, how would you explain the importance of your role?
So, well, it's good to see everybody. My role as the chancellor really is to serve as the single employee for the board of trustees, right? So my role is to really implement the policy and the direction set by the board of trustees, and really to provide support to the colleges so that they can actualize the missions and visions of each institution, and support ultimately student success. And so that goal really is to coordinate right in and amongst the institutions, so that we can be working in one accord towards those goals. So I kind of serve as the conduit, right, between the two, helping explain and communicate up to the board of trustees, who actually supports and represents the community voices, right? What the community has done for them as elected officials, and helping them actually understand what's happening at the colleges and on the ground with students, so that it helps inform their decision making in terms of policy direction for the district. So that's a really boring answer, but you can publish that too. And
Awesome. So our next couple questions will be coming from our staff writer, Nico.
Hi, Nico.
Hey. So could you describe someone in your life that's been a role model to you?
There's so many. My brain is like, my brain is just, I'm so sorry. I know we have only a couple minutes, so let's see. You're gonna start waving your arm too.
We went through that last question pretty fast. You got some. We can always come back to this too.
Could we, like, yeah, my brain is like,
Okay. We'll go to the next question.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, I have somebody. Okay, I have a role model. Sorry, it just took me a second. So, I think ultimately, like, I feel like there are so many, that's why I was having a hard time. And I think like one of the role models that I would like elevate is a student. His name is Terrence Williams. And Terrence really, like, I had the honor of like learning about his life experience. When I was the president at Laney, he was the associated student government president, did work, and, really struggled with basic needs, insecurities, was homeless, was housing insecure, was like, had lost his family, was really like on his own. And I think like part of why I say he's a role model for me is because he taught me through like the most dire circumstances that you can find joy, that you can move forward in your life, and carve out for you despite circumstances and but despite like what people say about you, a life that is, and be a person that's worthy of like attention and investment and those particular things. So he honored me with like being a partner, and helped me understand the lived experience of students so that I could be a better advocate. So he's totally a role model to me. And then I look at what he's doing now, what he's accomplished, what he'll continue to accomplish. So I just like, I think of him and I think of like other students. I mean, Kieran Darkwater, is an example who taught me about how to better support trans identified students in their lived experiences. And so there's just like so many, like I just carry them with me. So yeah, that'd be one of the role models I can think of right now.
Thank you. Next question.
Could you tell us about your childhood and how it defined who you are today?
Yeah, so I'm one of 7 children, and I was adopted from Korea, and so I was abandoned. I lived in an orphanage when I was little and in a foster home, and so then I was couriered on an airplane here to the United States when I was about 2 years old. So I don't have a real birthday, and I was adopted into a family of, and my parents are both white. And I had 2 older children, 2 brothers, my 2 natural children that are my brothers. And so I think like it's my childhood was defined, you know, in a lot of ways about being different, being sort of feeling like I didn't belong in spaces because I look different from folks, but then also really being loved, right? By like parents who both only have a high school education, who, you know, like my dad served in the military and they saw a bunch of abandoned children when he was stationed in Taiwan, and my mother was with him. So they were high school sweethearts. And so they knew that they wanted to adopt children if they couldn't have any of their own. But then my parents went on to start doing foster care. So my father has since passed, but my mother, they've had over probably 150 foster children. And so I grew up in a household of, you know, having foster children in our house. So, you know, and then they ended up adopting 4 more children. So I have siblings who are African-American and Latinx. And so we were really like a racially diverse family and a neurodiverse family in terms of my younger siblings all suffer from, not suffer, actually, strike that word, please, have been, have lived with different disabilities, both physical and neuro related disabilities that have, you know, changed the trajectory of their lives. And so I think that my entire that life has been sort of like, my childhood has been about being othered and different, but also realizing sort of that my identity hasn't been Asian really. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, people see me in a particular way, but my lens is so different just because of the family that I've had. So I think I've learned a lot about, you know, what it means to be diverse, like what it means to like be open to other things. And my childhood is defined by like a lot of gratitude. That love should center, you know, sort of things. So that's how I approach things. And that you can never judge a book by its cover, right? That like, we're so like expansive. And so spending a lifetime being judged by people has taught me to try to not do that with others. So really, I'm very, like my brain is going very slow today. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for your answer. Next question.
Clean up the Q&A is what I'll say. You know?
What is your favorite movie and or TV show?
So I am a fan of the West Wing. So I'm a huge West Wing fan. I was a long time ago. So I didn't watch it when it came out. And later I watched it like sort of in syndication, and now probably it hasn't aged as well as, in some aspects of it, right? But every once in a while I rewatch the series because I just I'm really committed to democracy and service and what it means to work on a team and really try your best and want to find a way to do things. I don't know, there's just something that really speaks to me about that thing. I like Madam Secretary too, so I'm really a service oriented Aaron Sorkin fan, sort of. I have an idealized sense of yeah, when I feel down, I kind of watch it because I'm recommit to yeah, the ideals of we can do this and yeah, so that's what I would say.
Next question.
What's a food you think everyone needs to try?
Gosh, a food everyone needs to try. Oh, this is a good question. God, I love food. I love eating. So the funny thing is I grew up the way I grew up. I'll just tell the story and then is that, I grew up in a pretty very working class family. So again, my mom, God, love her, could not cook. It was just my dad worked in the produce industry there in Oakland. So he was worked the graveyard. So we had really fresh vegetables and fruits, but she could not cook to save her life. And so I didn't really get exposed to a lot of food until I went to Berkeley, right? Until I was an undergraduate at Cal and people were eating all this stuff. I never had fish, we didn't grow up with fish. It was a very meat and potatoes, overcooked vegetables kind of thing, right? And so I remember getting the first time to try Japanese food, to try sushi, and I was oh my God, it just I was I can't eat anything raw, and I would only eat unagi right at the time, because it had sauce on it and stuff. And then I just started to get exposed to it, and I was this is good. So it was really delicious and amazing. So, but then through my life, I've realized there's so many people who've never tried sushi because they don't think that they can eat raw stuff, and it's kind of life changing. So I guess I would say sushi for that reason, because it reminds me of being exposed to it. Oh, but my roommate in college, she tried to make me fish for the first time. And I guess we were didn't have any money that she bought the cheapest fish ever. And it was so bad. Our apartment stank. And it was the worst fish I've ever eaten. She was trying to expose me. So that fish experience was not good, but eating actual sushi was delicious. So I'd recommend that to people.
Okay, thank you. Next we have here some questions about your professional background. So Lila, start us off.
Hello.
Lila.
Hi, nice to formally meet you. I'll see you at some meetings in the future, probably.
Yay.
Hope you're well. So the first question I have for you is, how did you get into education?
Yeah, so interesting. I think I got into education from being a first generation college student who was a product of affirmative action. And really so I was reached out to when I was in middle school from the early academic outreach program at UC Berkeley. It's the only reason I went to college. It's a trio federal program. And they really exposed me in middle school to the idea of going to college. And so, again, I'm the first and only in my family, my immediate family, to have graduated from college with a, bachelor's degree. And so, so when I finished undergraduate at UC Berkeley, I think I ended up doing a lot of stuff. I was the outreach what was I? I was like a freshman coordinator for CALSO, so the orientation program. Like I was really active in like sort of the student sort of thing. I worked for financial aid, right? Like I worked throughout college to put myself through. So I think maybe education somehow was like in my bones, I kind of think, or this idea that like I needed to give back. And so eventually I worked at UC Berkeley in the Office of Student Life when I first graduated from college. I then went on to work at the early academic outreach program. So I like went and was a middle school outreach coordinator, similar to what had happened to me. So I was sort of like, felt like I was giving back. And then, yeah, and then the rest is sort of history, I guess. The arm thing is good. It's like the first time you've done it though. So I feel like it's good. Okay.
No, that's okay.
All right, next question.
So let's talk a little bit about your career. Can you give a brief overview of your previous positions that you've held and which one prepared you the most for this position as chancellor?
Well, first of all, I think all of them have prepared me as chancellor, frankly. So I'll just start with the so number one, not only working at UC Berkeley, but I just want to offer the fact that I work for the Greenlining Institute, which is a multi-ethnic public policy organization. I think I talked to you all about this maybe last time that we met. And I think like ultimately for me, working in communities where you're focused on multi-ethnic coalition building and, you know, this idea that like communities shouldn't be fighting for like many resources, but should be like working in coalition to create more resources and do this is just a framework I have, right? And about multi-ethnic coalitions, right? So not allowing us to be like pitted against each other as communities of color, like fighting over scraps, right? So that mentality was like, has served me and is the reason I got into community colleges in a lot of ways. And so it's fundamental. But I've served as a faculty member and a trio coordinator at Chabot College. I went on to be a dean of counseling and matriculation at Evergreen Valley College. And that was like seminal sort of experiences for me, right? Being on the ground with students, how do you serve them? How do you think about their like educational pathways and trajectories? What are those like barriers that happen with transfer and articulation agreements? Like all of this stuff has been foundational to me understanding how community colleges work, you know, how best to sort of think about barriers and like creating institutions. So I went on to be a vice president and like college presidents. So yeah.
Thank you. Next two questions will be coming from our news editor, Ian.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can. Hello.
Perfect. Can you talk about a time that you faced pushback and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I'm just like, I can, good example. I'm trying to think of a good example. I think like the way I think about pushback is, you know, so I feel like I've had opportunities where we have conversations about decisions that are going to be made, right? Like what's best for the institution, implementing something new. So I can use example around like implementing like a new resource allocation process or a new program review process for an institution, right? You want constituency groups, students, classified professionals, faculty, and administrators to all have sort of input and say on what it is and how you're going to go about implementing it, right? But ultimately, at some points, like I've experienced where there is differing ideas or wants in terms of like whether that's timeline or how you're going to do it or understanding of the process from different groups. And so, you know, ultimately what I always try to do is hear people first, right? Like what's the issue, what's at hand, and then think about like where I really see from my experience where there's opportunities, one, to maybe figure out how to better explain things to people, you know, one, when we're making a decision. So the pushback comes from communication often, like poor communication. How am I explaining things? Can I explain it better? to actually really good and concise feedback that makes sense. And so we need to change or alter what we're doing. And so pushback can mean, right, that we're reevaluating what it is that we do. So that's sort of the way I approach it, is that I don't look at it as being negative, right? Or whatever, is that I try to really sort of lean into it and try to understand it, and then also make a decision to move forward when it's time.
Thank you. Next question.
And so you're a member of the Equity Avengers. Can you explain what that is and what you do?
So the Equity Avengers is, a group of 3 community college presidents, one's emeritus now, who are really focused on actually elevating and continuing to talk about and push for racial equity in California community colleges and higher education nationally. And so really we're kind of seen as advocates, but also supporters. So we're conveners and connectors. So what I do is connect, practitioners with research, connect and support college leaders with their teams, doing sort of trainings and work. I might speak at an event, right, to help elevate sort of what it is. We do a weekly chat on X where we highlight practitioners or researchers or and sort of try to continue to keep racial equity conversations at the forefront of the discourse, right, in community colleges. So that's kind of part of what we're doing, is just consistently elevating what's happening in the system and then also pushing for that. So we're doing a national campaign right now on Black learner excellence. And so statewide and nationally, we're convening groups across the nation to sign on and support the fact that we consistently have lower success rates with Black and African American identified students, and what institutions should be doing in order to move that forward, and other initiatives as well that we're working on around racial equity.
Thank you. Our next questions are going to be regarding your vision moving forward as the chancellor of the Peralta Community College District. So Tim, you can start us off.
So congratulations, Chancellor Designate.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. So what is your vision, if you have one, for PCCD's future? PCCD 2033.
Yeah, so let me just, I want to answer the question this way. So I definitely have vision. I think I just am always cognizant of the fact that I haven't been in the district, right? And that I really need to take the time to hear from and listen to folks as we create a vision together. So it's not really my vision. It's really going to be a collective vision, I hope. So my vision, though, is to come in and actually galvanize and honor and celebrate and support the incredible students and employees that are in the district, right? And to hear them and to know that we can set a path forward together to reframe the conversation that consistently happens about Peralta. So I'll give you examples. And I just want to say this, I've gotten lots of, I haven't been approved yet, right? So it's a little bit strange. I haven't said anything publicly because I was in contract negotiations and haven't actually been approved by the board officially until hopefully tomorrow night. And so I've been quiet about sort of doing things, but because it's been splashed everywhere, I've gotten lots of congratulatory, remarks, and it's been amazing to hear from people how much joy they feel like they have and all this stuff. But I will say that I've also gotten these messages, and it's been done to me in person, where people will say, oh, I just want to congratulate, but condolences, right? They want to give me condolences. And I'm just freaking mad about I would say a different word. But I know my time's up, but I'm just going to go over on this question just a little bit, just to say that, I take umbrage with the condolences. I've been very clear to people that I applied for the job because I believe in the district, its students and employees, and that I'm very, very clear that the vision is that I'm really determined. and really hope-filled about the future of our district. And that like I expect people to rally around us and want for us to change what the narrative has been about Peralta, frankly. And so that's my vision, is that we will rise, that we will be like not what everybody wants us to be or what they like, purport us to be in this really negative sort of frame that they have about our district. I'm just done with that. Like, so write it on my heart, say it today, like, if not us, then why? We're gonna do it. So I'm positive about that. So like, and I can't really swear in front of y'all, but I want to be like, MFers, and I'd say a bunch of other stuff, but like, let's keep it clean for this.
Okay. Next question will be coming from Tamara.
Hi, Tamara.
Hi there. I'm an adult learner myself, and so this is something I was thinking about a lot. With the ongoing focus on increasing enrollment at the college, some students feel as though adult learners are being sidelined in a way. How do you plan to address the unique needs of adult learners who often balance school with work and or family?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So number one, I think it's like at a disservice to the entire district, to other adult learners, frankly, period. If you look at the data and you look at actually who we serve and who is the opportunity to serve in our service areas, it is absolutely adult learners like you who we should be thinking about and really training our faculty and our classified employees to better serve. So number one, right, like we need to be focused on andragogy. How do we best support adult learners in the classroom? How do we actually think about the outreach and the kind of support they need? And part of my goal is around sort of speaking about this, publicly, creating plans of action that really look at who we're supposed to serve. So the data shows us that that's the case. And then what we need to do. So in addition, the support for and the focus on basic needs, on supporting parenting students, on really like thinking about the whole student. So both in my national, statewide advocacy, and then certainly bringing that work directly back to the colleges. And I think I demonstrated that when I was the president at Laney College. We served mostly adult learners, right? I mean, so it was really incongruent to me that we were always talking about like that, like idealized, oh, they come from high school and that. And I'm like, all of our data showed that that's not who we served, right? Like, so it was silly that we are always still catering our policies and our procedures around a population that didn't, do that. And so those are hard conversations to have when you're talking about changing schedules so that we can serve evening students, or how do we actually think about services that support, right, these kind of learners. So that's what I would say.
Next question will be coming from Leo.
Hi, it's a virtual meet you.
Hi, Leo. Wait, can you wave your hand so I can see? Okay, I couldn't see where the voice was coming from. Thank you.
Students and faculty alike have become increasingly concerned with the constant state of decay on much of the facilities throughout the PCCD colleges. What are your plans to ensure that facilities across all 4 colleges see improvement throughout your tenure?
So the last part of your question broke up.
Sorry.
That's okay.
To ensure that facilities across all 4 colleges see improvement throughout your tenure.
Okay, how facilities see improvement across all 4 colleges, is that okay? I mean, facilities has to be, right, a high priority, and it certainly was one of my highest priorities when I was at Laney. And I think so part of it is we need an analysis of where things are at, where we're doing, what's the focus, and where are we investing sort of those bond dollars that we have, how are they being utilized? I mean, obviously escalation is consistently going to be an issue given the fact that many of our projects have not moved forward from what I understand. So 1, it's an assessment, and then 2, it's an assessment of the team that we have to support these efforts. How are we situated? is it the best way to execute and support what the campuses need on the day-to-day basis, is also as well as sort of what the long-term plan for keeping these facilities going, and or creating new facilities and opportunities. So that'll be a look at that assessment and the execution of it, the appropriate staffing, right? Who are the leadership for the area, and the overseeing of those things is probably how I would approach it. And it's definitely one of my top priorities. And I think it's some of the board's top priorities too. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question will be coming from Tim.
So similar, campus security has been an ongoing problem at Peralta for years, like going back into the 1990s. And a recent survey found that only 32% of respondents felt very safe on campus. So as chancellor, how do you propose to address the security concerns of all the constituents of Peralta?
Yeah, so I think like part of me, it's an approach to reframing what safety is and what security is. And so when I was there as the president of Laney, we did some district-wide listening sessions really on what that meant. And so I wrote a report to the then chancellor about really reframing safety and security and recognizing where at every level we had opportunities to improve. So it's not only in the policy and the execution of like safety, like who patrols campuses and stuff like that, but one, facilities, such as the question that I was asked before, right? Do we have safe and secure learning facilities? Number two, how is classrooms being managed? When do things escalate? How do we provide appropriate training for those folks? And then also support for mental wellness and, and wellness support services and those things. So that you look at safety as sort of like a whole, in a whole sort of different frame. So, my goal is to go back and actually assess like what's happened since that recommendation came through, what's been executed, right? What has been the approach? What are parts of that plan that maybe weren't implemented? And then also, an assessment again of like what people are saying, because when we did the assessment, it wasn't just like the physical, like we want police here or not, right? There were so many other things that we recognize were a part of that feeling safe and feeling secure, that I don't know have been addressed. I don't know if they've been addressed yet. So that would be how I would approach it.
Next question will be coming from Satch.
Hello, Ms. Gilkerson. I've been your time counter today, so appreciate you joining on with us. Question for you is, what is your plan to ensure that all constituent groups that serve students are held accountable?
Well, thank you for being such a great timekeeper. And so, so I think part of this thing is it's a culture change, right? Like, I really think like, I'm really focused on how do we all hold ourselves accountable and how do we hold each other accountable? And I think for me, like centering the work for me is like about radical love, right? And it's an ethic of sort of like, what do we want for our community? What do we want for students? What do we want for ourselves? And if we want these things, right, to feel emotionally safe, to feel like we have the conditions for learning and for working, and those particular things, and we have sort of commitments to what that means to be in community and working together, and idealized practices, then how do we sort of hold each other accountable for our own roles in it and for each other's roles? Because I think part of what's happened is there's just this culture, right, of like, you didn't do that, like just always like the gotcha, you didn't do this, or, like calling on account. And like, I just feel like part of it is we have to change it. Something's not working. And so we have to be able to like come at a new realm of thinking about like accountability and commitment. So I think my goal is to sort of help rebuild the community in our 4 colleges and district wide, so that we can like develop that together.
Thank you.
What's up?
Question will be coming from Sam.
Hello.
Hi, Sam.
So, recent federal judge ruling deemed the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as the DACA program, illegal. Although there are plans to appeal the ruling, the future of DACA is uncertain. How, as chancellor, would you respond to the program were it to be struck down in the Supreme Court and support students affected by this decision?
Well, we have a lot of work to do. So it's not only DACA, right? So that's a small portion of students that are actually, that we serve that are actually undocumented or mixed status in our communities, right? So while we're certainly concerned and want to continue to support that, we need to think about the ways our district can support those who are not documented in our community and making sure they have access. So part of this is around, administration, financial aid administration, making sure students know what their rights are as it relates to rules that happen not federally, but here in the state that give access, right, to education. There are also things in Ed Code that do support actually allowing folks who are undocumented to actually go to school for 6 units or less without actually having to pay, which to me is it's a pathway to AB 540 and SB, I think it's 1110. I don't know the number. But basically to getting status to be able to pay in-state tuition and to be eligible for programs and services like EOPS and CalWORKs and those things that are state funded. So, there's a real way to work collaboratively, right, with organizations to ensure that and actually just faculty and staff, right, to ensure that people know what the rules are, how we can still support, even if things are struck down, that our district can take certain strides to create our own policies and procedures that help do that. And so that's one thing that I've advocated for and recently got passed in the San Jose Evergreen Community College District is the non-resident tuition fee waiver program as a pathway for non-citizens.
You have stated that you are not coming into this role with a specific vision or plan in place for classified professional development. This has raised some concerns amongst classified employees who have said that the current interim chancellor, as well as the previous chancellor, have both had poor or even zero communication. How do you plan on repairing the trust and creating an environment where classified personnel feel like their voices are being heard?
Yeah, so in my comment at the, I think you're trying to quote what I said at the open forum. So I want to really be clear that I'm absolutely 100% committed to professional development and support for classified professionals without question, number one. And that two, like I shouldn't deem to know what classified professionals want or need. And that my expectation is that I come in and work with classified leadership district-wide to hear and determine what they want in terms of a program for professional development for them that's supported. And so I've done that in every role I've been president, both at Laney College and at Evergreen Valley College. So that's number one. So number two is the expectation that I'll meet regularly with classified leadership, right? To hear from them, to begin to work on goals that they have. So generally my process has always been like, I try to hear from constituent leaders and I'm asking them, what's your goal? What are we trying to do? And how can I better help support you in like sort of getting to the goal? Or how do I sort of mentor and say, this is sort of an idea, or this is maybe how we could go about doing it, understanding sort of the lay of the land and what might be barriers to sometimes implementation or doing things. I try to advise and coach versus sort of like telling people, what to do. That's kind of been the process. So, my plan is to meet with and listen to and then support folks in the development of that. And makes me really sad to hear that feedback too, to be honest.
Next questions will be from Leo.
Hey, I'm gonna try to speak up a little bit, sorry. So the first question is, how do you plan on navigating PCCD's ongoing budget crisis? And should students and faculty be concerned about class cuts and layoffs?
Can you just say the first part of the question again? Just really the first part.
How do you plan on navigating PTCD's ongoing budget increases?
Okay. So I think first and foremost, my plan is to understand exactly what's going on, right? To really get a good lay of the land about where we are, and what it's looking like going forward. So again, I haven't started yet, so I haven't jumped in and know all the nuances of things. So, my first plan is to make sure that I really understand what it is so that I can explain things to people, right? So no, I don't anticipate right now where we're at, I can't say right now that we won't have class cuts or, those particular, it's just not in a position to be able to say that. But I am in a position to be able to say that I'm going to learn the information and that we're going to communicate it well. And then be able to work with constituency groups and with students and with everyone to really understand what our options are in terms of navigating going forward. And so, that's really the best plan I can do, is the sense that nothing isn't, all of this information is ours to sort of tackle together. And so I think the best way to be able to do that is to understand and communicate it effectively, and then create spaces for developing a shared plan that folks can understand and can move forward on.
Question. How will you balance pay parity for all Peralta constituent groups, given the district's fiscal challenges?
Well, so again, I think part of the addressing things is to say, what do we want? What are our values? Where do we want to do things, right? So if we're going to do X, we're going to have to get rid of Y, right? Like that there will be decisions that we'll have to make about what we want to do. And so that's sort of why in the public forum, I was saying also is really getting the opportunity and time for our district to be able to say, what do we vision our colleges to be like? What kind of learning spaces do we want? What kind of instruction do we, what are the services and the things we can do? What do we vision we want for students and for employees? And if this is what our vision is to do that, right? And we want to adopt and say, this is where we're headed towards, what will it take for us to do that? So what do we have to extract or add or raise funds to do to be able to kind of get there, so that we're really clear about what it is? So whether that's pay parity, right? Whether that's, another issue of certain support for students, or, certain buildings to be a particular way, or every student to have X, or an instructor to have Y in the classroom. Those are the things that we're going to have to put on the table to have a conversation about, and then look at what we can actually do. And I know that's very hard, for anybody to do, but at some point the pie is the pie, right? And so we'll have to figure out where best to, put those resources.
Next question comes from Sam.
Hello, me again.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. So according to most recent statistics, only 20% of students have completed their transfer level English classes within their first year at Peralta. For math, it's only 19%. As a result, only 6% of students have achieved the Vision for Success goal, meaning that they received either an AA, AS, AST, AAT, or Chancellor approved credit certificate. What are actionable steps that you can take as Chancellor in order to ensure that Peralta has a higher rate of transfer students?
Yeah, so number one, it's the data like this and the convening together with folks. So understanding that this is part of the funding formula, right? Like it is part of the funding formula to be able on the performance-based side of that funding formula for us to get to the place that we want to be. And it's not even for me so much about the funding formula. It's about students have said X is their goal. Right? If students are telling us that their goal is to transfer and we're not getting them to transfer, what are we doing? Right? What are we doing? What are the conditions? What is hard about what's the barrier to doing this? So is it something that we're doing in terms of communication with students? Is it something that we're doing in terms of our scheduling and the way it's done? Is it something in the relation to how we're offering the class and the support services we have to make students, help them be successful in their endeavor, right? So it'll be convening those sort of conversations, bringing in the content experts in those areas to really assess the data, what's happening. Are there other impacts that we're seeing with particular communities? So let's just be honest, right? When we look at the data, will it be when it's disaggregated by, adult learners versus, high school learners, when it's disaggregated by race or ethnicity or gender, do we see certain patterns, and how is it that we can start to address those, right, at the sort of institutional level in terms of coming up with differences that we can do. So my role as the chancellor is to sort of help elevate and support the college presidents in their role. So I want to be clear that I won't be, jumping into the like that's not my role. My role is really to say, right, like this is what the issue is, how it interconnects to funding and to just also our mission. And then asking and supporting the college presidents in their own practice and their work with the colleges, and then working with our district-wide constituency groups also to help address and get a plan moving forward. So I think that there may be a lot of things that folks don't see, and I've had a lot of work in this area, so I feel like I'll be able to serve as a good thought partner to the presidents and to to faculty and folks as we think about new strategies for addressing it.
Next question comes from Satch.
Hi, question for you. Do you believe that PCCD provides adequate career pathways for students? Not, how do you plan on expanding them?
I think Peralta offers a lot of incredible career pathways for students, absolutely, without question. And you can see it in terms of like industry recognition, and a lot of these programs are specialized and they're not offered elsewhere. So I do believe we do offer an incredible amount. Now, the question, always continues to be is what's our assessment of what we're doing? So, do we need to be offering this program? Are there other folks who are offering the program, right? Like, what's the efficacy of these programs? Are we meeting 21st century, workforce and learning needs? Have we updated the programs? So I always think that institutions need to be nimble and to be thinking outwardly about what they, what we're seeing in terms of the economy and where people need to go. So I think, there's been growth in AI, programs in the district, and, looking at that piece. So I do see growth in those areas. And so, again, the role of the chancellor is to help set goals, to help support the colleges in their work, to sort of keep us connected to, what can we do with the resources that we have. And so some of that analysis needs to consistently happen, and it should be an expectation of our community and of the chancellor that we're consistently assessing what it is that we're offering and doing for outcomes for students.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that we have some extra time, because I actually have one follow-up question. You mentioned earlier, you referred to yourself as a product of affirmative action. As you may know, affirmative action was recently struck down in the Supreme Court this year. And so, as an education leader, what do you have to say to that? And how would you respond as a leader moving forward? Like, what should colleges do?
Yeah, so you can read the equity of venture statement on how I feel about sort of the striking down and sort of what the Supreme Court's doing these days, right? I think my role in education is to consistently elevate and make sure that we're supporting the critical thinking of our students, and our faculty and staff are creating conditions for students to learn how to be critical thinkers about what's going on these days. And so it's less about my opinion per se, right? Than it is about sort of making sure that there's a safe space for students to be able to think about those things. I absolutely am a product of affirmative action. I mean, you can look at my SAT score, my college grades. I constantly get, my own children are like, whatever, you only had a 3.8 and you had to barely broke 1,000 on the SAT and you went to Berkeley, right? And I'm like, I didn't do so bad for myself. So, but ultimately, right, affirmative action was the reason I got in 100%. And so I just think, again, that folks who come from particular communities, it's in the data, we see it, are not afforded the same opportunities as others. And I am I'm proud to be a product of it, because without the chance to have gone to college, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I think how I show up as a leader is that's why I work in California community colleges, where 70% of our students are students of color, where, we transfer more students to CSU and to UC, and we are their feeder. And this is the answer to that, right? It is the fact that we are creating conditions for students to be able to go on and achieve those next levels of their education, being an open door institution that we are. And so that's why I've committed my life to the work of community colleges in a lot of ways as an as sort of an antidote to sort of policy and systems. And so that's why we need to do better in sort of the things that we talked about today, in terms of making sure that we can meet the outcomes. I hope I answered your question. It was like a roundabout. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel like since I got my opportunity to ask my follow-up question, I should open it up to anyone else, since we have a little bit of time. Does anyone have we have maybe time for 1 or 2 questions? Tamara has a question. Okay.
Hi again, Tamara. I had the opportunity to attend the forum with the chancellor of the whole California Community College District, and she spoke about the 2030 vision that she's working on with the governor to improve the transfer rate from community colleges to and CSUs to UC and such, and adult learners and whatnot. And she also said the focus of that program is adult learners. Have you had a chance to speak with her about this vision, or collaborate in what way, or what kind of plans would you hold around that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the state chancellor's office sets a vision for all of the 72 districts and the 116 colleges in the system. And so, in my role as a CEO, I can give feedback, right, to the state chancellor through the venues that's offered, right? These listening sessions, those things. She sent me a note of congratulations on becoming the chancellor. So, I mean, I do know Dr. Christian, not well, but I think that the goals that are laid out in the Vision 2030 are in many ways are already goals that are laid out for Peralta, right? And so I feel like the work that we'll continue to do to shore up the district, to, move us forward, to support our adult learners, and the other areas, which, she's called out: dual enrollment, sustainability. Our district has already been, a huge leader in sustainability, no fossil fuels, those kind of things, from before. And so I feel like there's a lot of alignment already between what she's, putting forth.
Awesome. Thank you. Ian is thinking about a question. Give us just one moment.
Nope. Make it easy, Ian. Come on now.
I have a potentially easy question.
Okay. Yay.
Tea or coffee?
I like both, to be honest. So, yeah, I love a good chai tea latte, but then I like it dirty sometimes, so that's it's both together. So it's kind of yeah. So, yeah. Have you all had a dirty chai before? Yeah, right? Like those are like,
Everything.
While we wait on Ian, would you rather be able to speak any language or talk to animals?
ooh. Animals are so amazing, right? Like I think they kind of communicate. So I prefer probably do the language thing. I like would you rather. That's kind of cool. Let's do it. Yeah. That would have been a much better, easier. No, not much better. I just meant easier for me. Would you rather? This was hard. I was like, my stomach was like,
Or the depths of the ocean or the outer reaches of outer space?
Okay.
ooh. Oh gosh. I guess I might say ocean just because I love water. I just yeah, I like water a lot. And
Come on, Ian. Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Okay, so your potential contract, which has not yet been approved, is available at this point, and your term is set at 3.5 years. How do you feel that this specific length of time could allow or limit your potential impacts?
I think it's great. I am really I think nothing will limit my potential impact. I'm like, again, I'm really grateful to the board for giving me like what is, the length of a really good contract. So, there are chancellors who come in with 1-year contracts or not. So I think this contract demonstrates, one, my commitment to being here, to wanting to stay for a long time. And I think the board has really done an amazing job of actually making that statement too, with the commitment to the 3.5 years, and the rolling. So it's a rolling contract. The idea is that I would consistently be, again, that it would stay, right? So I just, like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm here, we're going forward, and I'm going to be here for the rest of my career. And so I just, yeah, I'm very hopeful. Like I just really am like, yeah, determined and like really want it to work. Yeah, I don't know. So
Thank you. Okay, one last question. Not everyone's gonna be happy with me because we cut out this question at first. You were debating whether or not we were gonna ask this. I'm making the executive decision, we're gonna ask it.
okay, editor-in-chief. All right.
Just, we're making no assumptions on your part, by the way, with this question. But just know that, some of us wanted to ask this. Who's your favorite Kardashian?
I quit.
We don't have a favorite.
Okay.
Really? A substantial interview and we end on that.
Yeah.
You don't have to run it.
I actually, like, just to be honest, like I was with my Chalice crew, so, and then they had me watching the Kardashians. So that's that research collective that I'm in at San Diego State. And so again, working with all these graduate students. And so we were like at our retreat and then wanted to watch the Kardashians. So I don't really watch it. Like I'm always working. So I don't, yeah. But so I feel like I'm letting down a whole generation of people by not having a favorite.
Well, a lot of us also don't have a favorite.
I love them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all the Kardashians.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Tammeil. We just really appreciate your openness with us and with student media in general. If your contract gets approved, we look forward to continuing our work with you.
Wouldn't it be like the biggest news story ever if they did all this and then it doesn't get approved tomorrow night? I'm like, I don't know. I won't be there. So we'll just pray that, what's supposed to happen happens.
Well, if that happens, we'll cover it.
I know you will, and hope I'm sure you'll break the news to me and I'll be the one who finds out that way. So
All right. Thanks very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
yeah, take good care. Be well. Bye.